So the new journey has begun. They are on the route to the promised land, taking the scenic route. Exodus 14:1. And the Lord said to Moses, 14:2. Tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the Red Sea, before Baal-zephon. You shall encamp opposite it by the sea. 14:3. For Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, they are entangled in the land. The wilderness hath shut them in. So here we have the Israelites. They're on this journey. And maybe they went a little bit too far. They're out in the wilderness there. And the Lord communicates with Moses and tells him to kind of turn back and encamp over here at this location with these very intense sounding names. The Pharaoh, if they're out in the wilderness there, maybe they're trapped in the wilderness. We need to go and rescue the Israelites. The Lord doesn't want Pharaoh to have a just cause in his pursuit of them. Exodus 14:4. I will harden, make stubborn strong Pharaoh's heart, that he will pursue them, and I will gain honor and glory over Pharaoh and all his host. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. And they did so. So we have this idea of making it so that Pharaoh wouldn't have a cause to provide aid for them out in the wilderness, but he's still going to pursue because of the hardness of his heart. He doesn't want the Israelites to go. He wants them back there working as slaves, doing whatever it is that the slaves did. And so here comes the conflict. Exodus 14:15. It was told the king of Egypt that the people had fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was changed towards the people. And they said, what is this we have done? We have let Israel go from serving us? 14:6. And he made ready his chariots and took his army. So now Pharaoh is having that realization. What is going on here? The Israelites have left. In his grief of his firstborn son and the grief of the land of the Egyptians, they did not process what had happened, what had occurred. But now, in a moment of clarity, they make the realization. The Israelites have left. They have given them permission to leave. They've given them gold, silver, jewels, and clothing on their way out. And there is that conflict within. They're supposed to be our servants. We need them back here. They cannot go. Pharaoh is getting his chariots to go and pursue them, to launch the attack upon the Israelites, to bring them back into the bondage and servitude of the Egyptians. Exodus 14:7. And took 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. He's not sending out a small raiding party. He is taking the full force of the entire Egyptian army. And here we have all these chariots, and we have the leaders with them. Something to note is, so you got a chariot, which is kind of like a little bit of like a buggy thing that's kind of towed behind a horse. In those days, in that land, horses were not as big as what we see today, so people weren't able to just kind of ride them around with full armor and weaponry. So they had chariots to tow behind the horses. Through selective breeding and whatnot, that's why in the Middle Ages we see all the knights and the cavalry riding the horses. But here we are in Egypt, thousands of years beforehand, and the horses are just towing these chariots. I don't know if that really adds anything, but I've always found it interesting. I've always kind of wondered, why is it that they are on chariots? It's like, oh, the horses were smaller. Of course. Exodus 14:8. The Lord made hard and strong the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and pursued the Israelites, for they left proudly and defiantly. You could almost picture or see Pharaoh here just seething with anger and wrath upon the knowledge that these Israelites had the audacity to leave, that they are defying him. Don't they know they have work to do? Why are they leaving? They need to get back here. Exodus 14:9. The Egyptians pursued them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, and camped at the Red Sea by Beerah, in front of Baal-zephon. So here we have the Israelites in the designated camping location designated by God. And now the face of Egypt has come. The army of the Egyptians, all these chariots, all these horsemen, the entire army of the Egyptians have come. And I presume they have encircled around them, but they have nowhere to go. They have a river on one side and are surrounded by an army on the other. Here is Pharaoh and his army looking down upon them. What can they do in this situation? Why has God led them to this spot? Exodus 14:10. When Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites looked up, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. And the Israelites were exceedingly frightened and cried out to the Lord. 14:11. And they said to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you treated us this way and brought us out of Egypt?" 14:12. Did we not tell you in Egypt, let us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. So here we have the Israelites. They're scared, they are terrified, they just left their home, they're on the run, and their old slave masters, they're after them. They're camping out in this location, but here comes an army of men and chariots pursuing them. You can truly feel their fear. And they're talking to Moses. Some of this is sarcasm. Was there no graves in Egypt? You got to get us buried out here in the wilderness, right? We got these lines here. People, when they're really in tough situations, they say things that they don't mean, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. And I'm sure these lines hurt Moses when he heard them. You know, he felt the pain of the Israelites. He was one of them. You know, yeah, he didn't grow up as an Israelite. He grew up kind of protected in the Egyptian home of the Pharaoh's sister or whatever it was. But he felt the pain of his people. And having them lash out against him, really, I'm sure it was very difficult and very hard for him to endure. The other thing that we got going on here as well is that, you know, yeah, there was a lot of plagues and wonders that the Egyptians saw, but the Israelites would have saw this as well, all these different events. They would have heard from their slave masters. It's like, man, yesterday, couldn't even go outside. It was just completely dark. Couldn't see anything. I couldn't see, you know, my hand in front of my face. It was just pure darkness. And then my firstborn son died, right? Like, it's just all these wonders. Oh, yeah. And, you know, there was frogs everywhere and the water was blood. It's like the Egyptians all experienced this, but so did the Israelites. They knew all of these things, but they have no faith in the Lord, that the Lord has the power to deliver them. And they're looking at Moses here. He is responsible. He is the one that has led them out of Egypt. Yes, Moses was led by God, but do they really know what that means? Do they really have an understanding of what has just occurred? Why would God bring them out here just to have them killed? Why did Moses bring them out here just to have them killed? They're blaming Moses. They don't see the big picture. They don't understand the powers at play here. They see this army of horsemen. They see the chariots approaching. But they have no understanding of the one that led them there, the all-powerful, living God. So here we are. Let us serve the Egyptians. We were fine as slaves. but now we are going to be eliminated, and they don't like that. Well, I don't think anyone would like that. What is Moses going to do? Exodus 14:13. Moses told the people, "Fear not, stand still, firm, confident, undismayed, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians you have seen today will never see you again." Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace and remain at rest. Here we have Moses comforting the people around him, comforting the Israelites, telling them to stand firm, that the Lord will be able to deliver them from this. Then we have this line, the Lord will fight for you. That's kind of interesting. Exodus 14:15. The Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward." 14:16. Lift your rod and stretch your hand over the sea to divide it, and the Israelites shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. So Moses has received instruction on what he needs to do. Point his staff, that rod. He's had that rod for quite a while now, and he's done a lot of miracles with it. And this time we are going to see the parting of the Red Sea. This is an incredible miracle. Exodus 14:17. And I, behold, I will harden, make stubborn and strong the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall go into the sea after them. And I will gain honor over Pharaoh and all his hosts, his chariots and horsemen. So we have the idea that the Lord is going to harden the heart of Pharaoh and the Egyptians again to make them pursue the Israelites, even though it doesn't really make much rational sense to charge after them into a parted sea. That it doesn't really make sense as to why the sea itself is parted into this supernatural phenomenon. But through the hardening of their hearts, they're pursuing them beyond reason. Exodus 14:18. The Egyptians shall know and realize that I am the Lord. I have gained honor and glory over Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen. The Lord will gain honor and recognition after this miracle, for it is something so supernatural that it's impossible to consider something else. And maybe that hardening of the heart will be released at this juncture in time, and Pharaoh will be broken as a result and see the truth and the true nature of reality presented before him. 14:19. The angel of God who went before the host of Israel moved and went behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went from before them and stood behind them. 14:20. Coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel, it was a cloud and darkness to the Egyptians, but it gave light by night to the Israelites, and the one host did not come near the other all night. So we have the Israelites camped out here on the side of the Red Sea. They're camped out by the river, and they see the Egyptians coming. And of course, you know, there's a time frame before when you see someone and when they arrive at you. They're not going 90 miles an hour in a car. You can see into the distance, and it takes time to travel, and they will be moving. I mean, yeah, they're on horseback. They're probably moving quickly, but they can still see them from quite a distance. So they see them approaching, and we have the cloud of the Lord, the cloud that led them the way that they've been going so far, leading them around. But now that cloud is no longer leading the path, leading the way. It is going towards the Egyptians, and to present a deep fog, to prevent them from seeing, to slow them right down to a crawl. They can hardly move. They can't see anything. They don't know what's going on. They know the general direction they need to go, but they must move much slower now. So it's going to take them a long time to catch up to the Israelites. So I wonder if this was like a perceptive thing as well, that we have the cloud, that the Egyptians, they see it and they can't see anything because it's just completely dark, pitch black. But to the Israelites, they see this cloud as light, as like an opportunity or a boon. So that when the parting of the sea occurs, that the light from this cloud is able to illuminate it so that they're able to see the process of the sea being parted open and the ground dry as it parts, so that they're able to kind of see what's going on and see this entire process. Well, the whole Egyptians or whatever are conflated by this cloud of darkness, and they don't get to see anything about what's going on. Exodus 14 and 21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. So in the movie version, it's kind of like the Israelites get to this Red Sea, Moses holds out his rod, and it instantly splits, and then they go and cross it. But in the text, it sounds more like the Israelites are kind of camping out there, and it's like nighttime, and they have the light of the Lord in the form of this cloud or this pillar of fire, so they're able to kind of see what's going on. But the Egyptians, they're all blinded, for it. To them, it appears as a dark cloud. And a dark cloud at nighttime, I mean, that's night on night. That's impossible to see anything, so they can't really do much pursuing. And this process of splitting the sea sounds like it's a much more gradual process. So this wind comes down, it blows down hard, and it kind of opens up a section, and then the ground needs to dry. And of course, when you blow on something, it kind of removes some of the moisture, because a lot of that ground moisture, like you split the sea, the bottom of the sea is going to still be wet, so it's going to take a while to kind of dry that off. So then they're not immediately crossing the river. It needs to dry out to a certain point, or else it'd just be like mud. They would go step in it and they'd be knee deep in mud and not be able to do anything. And they got women, they got old people, they got children, they got animals. The last thing you want to do is get stuck. Or it could also have rocks that are all slimy and slip on that and fall or whatever. So it's like the ground needs to be dry to a certain extent before it can be crossed, and it's kind of mentioned as it being dry as well. So this is probably a bit of a gradual process that occurs before they're able to make their journey across. And I've seen people make cases, oh well, you know, there was a meteor or an earthquake or some other natural thing that caused this. And I mean, there could be some elements to something like that, but that doesn't really go along with the text and what it says. We got the description of this wind, so whatever's going on with the wind patterns, whatever, God's lining them up, so we have some intense wind here to part the sea, dry out the land under it so that it's safe to cross. And it probably went on for a prolonged period of time so that it could kind of stabilize or whatever, so that they could actually get across without being in so much of a hurry that people are stumbling and falling and hitting their head on rocks and whatever, that it had to be safe for them to cross. What would be the point of God making a path if it was impossible to cross, right? Like, that just doesn't make sense. But this is probably an incredible event to witness. It's pretty cool. Exodus 14 and 22. And the Israelites went into the midst of the sea on the dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. So here we have the description of there being a wall of water on the left and on the right side. And that's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. I wonder what that looks like, if it's like a tapered wall where it kind of goes thinner and then thicker, or if it's like a sheer line where it's like, well, there's water there and then there's no water here. Like, I really wonder what the edges of this wall look like, if they were like sloped or straight up and down or whatever. It would be kind of cool to know exactly what the water looked like and kind of what this phenomenon was like, the details of it or whatever. I think that'd be quite fascinating. It's a pretty incredible event here. And all the Israelites were able to see this, for the Lord was providing light in the form of that fiery pillar. Exodus 14:23. The Egyptians pursued and went in after them into the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. The fog, the darkness must have let up enough, or they were just able to traverse it very slowly. But now they are in the pursuit again. They're charging after the Israelites. They see the water on the left. They see the water on the right. They see this unnatural formation here in this Red Sea. Yet they're still going to go for it. They're still going to charge after the Israelites. Their hearts have been hardened by the Lord. They're not thinking straight. They're not thinking rationally. They don't realize that this is a bad idea, going into somewhere unnatural like this. Exodus 14:24. And in the morning watch, the Lord through the pillar of fire and cloud looked down on the host of the Egyptians and discomforted them. So it's the morning now. They've gone through this all night to try to get towards the Israelites. And now we have the Lord discomforting them. What's going to happen next? Exodus 14:25. And bound, clogged, took off their chariot wheels, making them drive heavily. And the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. The Egyptians are trying to make their way across this land bridge in the water, but it seems as if some of the water is getting back into the ground and it is becoming muddy. The horses, they're unable to move, for they are sinking into the mud and they can't move very fast. The wheels of the chariots are getting filled with mud and they're unable to spin. The Egyptians are stuck now, partially across, and they can't move. The chariots are stuck, so they bail off of the chariots and they try to escape, for they know if this phenomenon were to end, they would be crushed by the water. And that would be the end of them, right? They would all drown or be pushed down the river or whatever. Not a very good circumstance. I mean, they're probably armored up. They're wearing heavy clothing or whatever, so they wouldn't be able to swim out of that very easily. And they realize the situation that they're in. They have a moment of clarity and see, just this is not a good situation. Exodus 14:26. Then the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots and horsemen. 14:27. So Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength and normal flow. When the morning appeared, the Egyptians fled into it, being met by it. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians and shook them off into the midst of the sea. 14:28. The waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and all the hosts of Pharaoh that pursued them. Not even one of them remained. So we just saw the destruction of the army of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh may not have been in the river himself. He could have been on the sidelines directing people on what he wanted to have done. So he may have saw the destruction of his entire army at this juncture in time. That would have been quite the experience. That would break a man. To lose the Israelites, these slaves that were as mighty of a people as the Egyptians were themselves, and to lose the army of Egypt at the same time. That would be a pretty rough day. Exodus 14:29. But the Israelites walked on dry ground in the midst of the sea, the waters being a wall to them on the right hand and the left. I kind of wonder like the time framing of this. Were the Israelites still crossing the river when they closed it behind them, getting rid of all the Egyptians in their pursuit, and they continued to walk and it was open to them but closed behind them? Was there something like that, or were they already across and this is just referring to how they were able to cross the river and it was dry when they crossed it, but when the Egyptians tried, it didn't go so well? It's interesting. Exodus 14:30. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. 14 and 31. And Israel saw the great work which the Lord did against the Egyptians, and the people reverently feared the Lord and trusted in, relied on, remained steadfast to the Lord and to his servant Moses. So the Israelites have finally escaped Egypt. They are no longer in the land. The army of Pharaoh is dead, and they see it on the seashore. The Red Sea is acting as a barrier to Egypt, so they have protection behind them, that the Egyptians can no longer pursue them. So here we have the ending of one story and the beginning of another.